Welcome to the Go Slow to Go Fast Lifestyle Podcast. This is the show where we explore how slowing down can help us live with greater purpose, lead with intention, and navigate life's biggest transitions, one step at a time. Today's guest has one of the most fascinating career journeys I've ever encountered. After spending 12 years serving as a Baptist pastor, helping people through life's deepest struggles, Eric Robinson made an extraordinary pivot. He traded the pulpit for a badge and spent the next 24 years as an FBI special agent investigating everything from drug cartels, organized crime, crimes against children, national security, and counterterrorism. Known by the fitting nickname Preacher to Breacher, Eric has lived in two worlds that most of us would never imagine crossing. One centered on faith and shepherding people, and the other on pursuing dangerous criminals and making that split-second life and death decision. Today, we'll explore what those two careers taught him about human nature, leadership, resilience, and discernment, and also burnout and what it really means to serve others. We'll talk about his upcoming book, Irreverent, from saving souls to chasing sinners in the FBI, and the lessons we can all apply regardless of our profession. All right, let's get into it. Eric, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Doing well. It's still early, so things could go either direction, but so far, having a good day.
So do you mind just sharing how you go slow?
So for me, coming from a law enforcement world, there's a saying of slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that is how, through regular training and repetitions, you would focus on being slow so that you could be efficient and carry through. But that was the physical part of going slow in the FBI. Since then, over the past number of years, I've been trying my best to adopt a mindfulness of pausing and thinking what's going on with me rather than studying the other person, my wife, my kids, someone else, to go, let me turn that back on myself and pause what's happening rather than just react.
I like that perspective because, while you've been in a very fast-paced, sensitive world, time sensitive, there's lots of things coming at you. You've been able to kind of pause and say, look, I need to kind of think differently now that I'm in a different environment and be mindful of myself.
Yes. And I was trying to adopt this in the FBI the last number of years. It's honestly how I would teach firearms as well, that when I had someone, one-on-one to say, take your time, no rush, but also think about what your shot is doing so that you can reflect on, not just like, here we go, and then see what happens, but if there can be an openness and just a reflection on what's going on in the moment, then you can say, well, that's why this messed up. That's why I did this well. If not, you're just living your life and not thinking about why things are happening.
Right. It's just interesting to me that you spent 12 years as a pastor before you joined the FBI. So do you mind just kind of sharing a little bit about what made you want to go into a totally different profession? Like, give us a little insight on what you were thinking about that at that moment.
Yeah, what made me want to do that was my body, which told me I couldn't take the stress of ministry anymore. I found myself incapable of separating people's problems from me adopting them. And it was nothing special. It wasn't like I had an extra tough congregation with terrible issues. But when people said, hey, I've got this problem, hey, I've got this marital issue, then I took that home and I perseverated on it. And that resulted in me having stress-related headaches every single day for 2 years. So I told my wife I've got to find a job with less stress, and that's why I joined the FBI.
Really? Coming from education, we had a little chat offline before this podcast started recording that I think education, law enforcement, and ministry are pretty high, stress areas of service leadership. So
Yeah,
I really feel like you went into one and then went into another pretty similar, but you felt it was going to be easier for you. So,
it
wow.
was, and I guessed right. It just was the day that I got accepted in the FBI. The headache stopped. I remember thinking, yeah, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to carry on with these problems. And the stress that I had in the FBI, because yeah, it's there, and there's your life's being threatened, and you're under deadline for things, but it just didn't affect me the same way. It
Mm,
didn't
hmm.
it didn't cause my body to tense up. So
Yeah.
because of that, it was the right choice.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, everybody's a little different. So we all can kind of, as long as we're aware of what our body and our mind is telling us, everything else will follow. So I love that you were able to figure that out and that you had a better, you know, so many years. How long were you in the FBI after you left the ministry?
24 years left.
Wow.
I joined in Easter of 2002. I preached my last sermon in the church. The next Sunday, I was in Quantico, Virginia, in the FBI Academy. And then the Sunday after that, I preached in the chapel at the FBI Academy because they were down a chaplain. I had to fill in.
Okay. Wearing two hats. Got it. All right. So you have definitely seen humanity at, at two different ends, right? Two different perspectives. And I think one of your taglines is that you were, working with saving souls, and then you went to chasing sinners. So can you kind of talk about those, polar opposites, what that was like coming from the ministry work as a pastor and then getting into that line of work where you're literally chasing people who are breaking the law?
Yeah. So when I got into the FBI, I'm at the academy and I'm having to learn law enforcement because that was unfamiliar to me. But also I'm trying to soak in this huge institution that's 100 years old, and there's so much to gather with that. So never handled a gun while I'm skipping rounds off the pavement. Former police officers, military, like they kind of get this more. And I caught up and I understood this, but by the time I got out into the field, I had a leg up on the rest of the folks because I had spent a dozen years working with people. And no matter what guns we have, technology, legal process, eventually they're going to be you work with people, you work with
Hmm.
informants, you work with victims, you work with criminals. And so I had those years of practice of listening, of drawing people out, of knowing how to make victims and informants feel safe and comfortable. And that helped me greatly. And then I was working with people who, on the one hand, in church, these were folks who were saying, I've made mistakes in life, I've done something wrong. And the difference between them and the criminals is they're saying, help me to change, help me to repent, to turn around. Whereas the criminals could see their crimes and go, I'm all in. Yeah, I'm doing wrong. No problem. I'm fine with that. And then we would have to step into forced repentance in a sense. Like they weren't going to do it on their own.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a difference of mindset when you're working with somebody who knows they've lived a life of lots of mistakes. I mean, it's already out there for everybody to see, especially when they're on like the 10 most wanted list. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
hiding
Yeah.
from that. So they're out there. Yeah. So, I mean, it's probably just different conversations, but you're getting to the same place, obviously. You're just starting at a different entry point.
Yeah. Well, obviously, but also for me, if I came to the criminals in a post arrest interrogation, if I left the judgment for court for later, but I could approach them in a similar way how I approached people in my church. And so no judgment on my face. I'm confronting them with activities that they've done that are wrong, and I'm trying to get them to admit to that. But I'm not wincing at what they would say. I'm not telling them they're a horrible person. And because of that, what's unique is in the moment, the most important thing is that trial that's in the future, whether they are going to spend 5 or 10, 20 years in prison. But if there's no judgment, if there's acceptance, and if I'm trying to find humanity in people, then they forget about that future and they just deal with now. So I've seen many people value the moment much more, the comfort of the moment, being accepted, and just having a civil conversation much more than what they know is going to happen in the future if they tell me some of the things they tell me.
Yeah, because no matter where people are coming from, they know if the person in front of them sharing that space with them is being authentic, is listening, and is a safe person. They can
Yeah.
feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that fosters a more civil conversation. It makes it feel like a safe place, even though, I pointed a
Yeah.
gun at him recently and put him in handcuffs, but it's still the mind doesn't quite grasp what if I tell you this, that's going to be bad for me in the future. It's
Hmm.
just a common conversation now.
Yeah. In the moment. Right. Wow. So, I've always kind of thought about this a little bit in back of my mind because I wanted to go into law enforcement in the beginning of my career. I went to school for that path and then I ended up in education. And a lot of people laugh that it's pretty similar anyway. But I was more of that. I wanted to do more of the prevention
Hmm.
and, you know, trying to work on ministry, if you will, trying to get kids to see the error of their ways before they went down the wrong path. So, in a sense, we're doing a lot of the same work, just in different avenues, different highways to the same city, really. But I always kind of wondered why Hollywood, I mean, I know Hollywood just makes things look so ridiculous for film. And I know that's why, because they got to sell tickets, they got to get people to do the downloads and watch their films. But when, I talked to somebody who's actually lived that life, would you say that Hollywood is completely off in left field, or are there any similarities to what you experienced?
Oh, there's plenty of similarities because the things that I got to be involved in were often very exciting. They were thrilling. But if you follow if you follow the course of it, it's well, that was, a couple of high points over a 15-month investigation. So I don't want to watch that movie either. So, let's
Hmm.
condense it to we're going to skip over getting on the phone and arguing with T-Mobile because your subpoena returns haven't come back yet and you're waiting on it. Let's skip over going through a computer to get all the evidence and tag it. But the high points of approaching a house, not knowing if the people inside are going to oppose us violently, having to go through that. Yeah, there's a thrill to that. There's many moments where, you know, especially when I was on SWAT, where, we're encountering things that would be life threatening. And then because we set up well and we knew what we're doing and we came with this advancement of force, most of the criminals made the right choice. We had many occasions where, we could see a guy looking out the window. You see 15 dudes, a ballistic rated Bearcat, rifles with lasers pointing in windows, and they realize they have two choices, and one of them is not a good one. So, because we had that, now people were, the force that we came with made it safer for everyone. But yeah, I remember watching clips for the TV show Quantico, and people would ask, like, is that realistic? And I think, well, I haven't seen it, but there's a hot chick getting out of a pool. And I don't remember any hot chicks at Quantico when I was there, and the pool was always broken. So, no, not real.
Yeah, I always kind of pictured it being like a cross between The Office and Miss Congeniality, but that's just, my mind. So,
Well, and there's a lot of joking and there's a lot of inappropriate humor that goes on, and that's
yeah,
that's how agents deal with some of the traumatic and disgusting
yeah,
things we come across. So, yeah,
sure,
sure. Miss
sure.
Congeniality.
Hmm. Hmm. The beginning part where they're making fun of the contestants. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, okay. So thinking about what you've experienced as an FBI agent and all the different facets of how that looks, can you think about the ways like you've spent some time interviewing suspects, building trust, reading people? So would you say that those same communication techniques are what anybody listening out there could use in every day when they're leading, parenting, teaching, maybe in business or, whatever part of their daily life? Is there anything that would help listeners out there kind of think about that experience?
Yeah, it's absolutely useful across the board. I mean, I got to practice these skills in ministry, and then I found they were useful in interrogations or just in dealing with witnesses and people. The idea of being curious and open. When I was a pastor, if you come to me and say, "Hey, pastor, I've done this wrong thing," and I just give you Bible verses in reply, that's probably last time you're talking with me about this because I'm not really hearing you out. And then that was going to be the same with working in the FBI. A lot of it is being open to what other people have to say. In law enforcement, especially with just local cops, they're taught read techniques for interrogation. And part of that is if the subject starts denying things that you're saying, you stop him because you don't want him to latch on to that defense. And I think, I want to hear what he has to say. I want to hear what he has to say because I probably am right. I probably know what's going on, but I want to hear maybe there's some clarity that's happening. Maybe I say, "Hey, I know you killed your neighbor." And the subject says, "No, no, no, I didn't. He came at me with a shovel and I shoved him." And that's when he hit a rock, with his head. So there's things that you can learn. You can even learn how that how that subject is maybe going to defend himself in court based on how he replies. You can tell that they're going to not be open to you if everything's a lie. Everything's a lie. Like, okay, well, this guy won't cooperate. But there's so much you can learn rather than just saying, "I know everything. I've got this down." Being curious and being open.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to do a lot of that when I was interrogating middle school students about what may or may not be in their book bags when they walk through our doors. But that's it, it's the relationship. You've got to start from the beginning and get to know whoever you're talking with, because you will find out a lot. You'll find out a lot about how they see things, you know, maybe what they have for breakfast and what kind of, what their, I guess, behavior is going to be like. You can kind of predict a lot when you get to know somebody in a short time. Like 30 minutes can tell you a lot about somebody.
Yeah. And there were many times, especially when working with criminals, here's the post arrest interrogation. I have to find something that I can connect to them with. And so, you're working with sex offenders, like, what can you have in common there? Or like, how can you see? And it could be just that this guy is a father, I'm a father. Or I had one sex offender who was telling me about the 13-year-old boy that he had assaulted. And he's telling me that he loved him. And
Hmm.
that's wholly inappropriate. It's disgusting in the way that he's talking about, but now I can identify with that because
Hmm.
I love my kids. I know what it is to love someone, and that's something then now I grab onto to say I can understand that, let's develop this more. And as we talk about it, it's just more and more damning for him as well.
You want to get to the bottom of what happened. And so part of that is getting to understand their perspective in their mind. And it may not all be truthful. Have you ever interviewed somebody who was so intelligent that they were able to really mask everything about their personality?
I have interrogated people who thought they were that intelligent. I mean, I've definitely investigated sociopaths
Mm,
who, in the sense that they felt no emotion.
mm-hmm,
And if you feel no emotion, that's a superpower
mm-hmm,
because you and I start committing crimes. There's things that are going to bother us, even if it doesn't prevent us. For him, that was a slick ride because nothing slowed him down
mm,
when victims said, "You took my money and I need that to care for my disabled child." It just didn't register. It didn't matter. Not that he was coarse about it. He's like, don't worry, you're going to get your money. I'm going to, make it in the future, which he knew he wouldn't. But
mm,
I had one man who it was wild how he thought he was so intelligent. He was on disability from a broken back, and he had assaulted a 15-year-old girl, had actually kidnapped her and had stashed her away at another location at this time. And he was like just free to talk, just a pleasant man. "I'd love to talk with you. Let's discuss this." And I think because he was so isolated and he'd fooled his wife to think, oh no, this 15-year-old girl she's a daughter of a college friend that I've never told you about. And because she was so easily duped, he thought, oh, I can do this to the FBI as well. Hey, here you go. Feel free to look through my phone. I've got nothing to hide. And, all the chats were deleted. And I thought, you're not that smart, man. But yeah, we ended up catching him and rescuing the girl in about an hour north from us.
Yeah, and those happy endings are always what we want to hear about. Those are the good stories when you actually do get to save a life and return somebody to their family. So, but how would you mentally prepare for, I don't know what percentage of the cases didn't go that way? How did you get through those?
I mean, there were times where there weren't positive resolutions for agents, and this was a difference when I was talking about the stress with ministry and with working in the FBI. I knew that my job came to bring an indictment, and once the indictment came, or a plea of guilty, now my job was over. And while I could care about the victims, it wasn't my place. And there was nowhere for me to step in and, find out later and be involved in their lives. So it made it so that there was a cutoff point because not just, it might sound a little cold, but I've got the next guy to go after. And so I don't have the time to spend wondering how that teenage runaway that we saved from a pimp is now doing. We've done our job. We've put that person in prison, and now we have to just trust that they'll be taken care of in the system.
So essentially, the FBI role gave you pretty clear boundaries as far
Yeah.
as what your responsibility was. But when you were a preacher, you felt like you were responsible for the whole congregation. And so I can see how that was a lot heavier.
Yeah. I mean, what do you do when one of your worship leaders comes to you and says, my husband, who is a friend, met someone online and he's having a psychic break and he thinks he's in love and he's leaving me and our 3 kids? I don't just, I mean, that doesn't end when she's done telling me. And then he moves on, and then the family still has issues. And yeah, it's good that you point out I did not have boundaries. I had not understood them enough, and I failed to do the things necessary to find a way to separate myself from this.
Yeah. What advice would you have to anybody out there right now listening or watching who has a hard time working on those boundaries?
I, I'm wiser now because I'm 25 years older. And I now understand those things. I didn't seek out a mentor or someone that I could speak plainly with, to speak bluntly with, who could support. I mean, that was my fault that I knew this was a problem, but I still didn't seek it out. I didn't have a group of men around me. And a lot of it, like, I can give my excuses and circumstance, but I was kind of on an island as the only pastor of the church. And part of it was me just, being in my late 20s, early 30s, not being seasoned enough to know what a man should do, what a person needs to do to take care of these issues. So like a man, I just gritted my teeth and had headaches every day and pushed through it for 2 years.
Yeah, in my experience, I've seen school counselors really have a hard time with this, having that, this is a job. And while I'm going to worry about the kids, I have to compartmentalize it and carry on about my day because I have more kids that I need to see. And I have a family at home and I have my health I need to think about. So it is a struggle for so many out there who are, serving kids or families, congregations, schools, and those jobs. So, but thinking back to the FBI, I know that you're retired now. You probably have so many stories that you're going to share. And I know you have a book coming out. Do you want to speak
Do
about that a little bit?
I do. That was my Father's Day gift where my wife made a nice poster of that. So my book comes out in October. It's called Irreverent, From Saving Souls to Chasing Sinners in the FBI. And it's a story of what happens if you take a Baptist pastor and you pluck him out of the pulpit and you stick him in the FBI and he gets to do some crazy things. So I tell many stories of cases I initiated or I was a part of. And something that I came to recognize pretty quickly in the FBI was every agent has dozens of stories, and we're always telling them. But then as you step back as an agent going, that's a pretty amazing story. And I can get on the phone right now and I can call up a buddy and say, hey, I'm on a podcast. Tell this crazy, tell some story, and they'll have plenty to say. So I like the way that I put it down. I think I'm good at some storytelling. I was chatting with a colleague who just retired saying, yeah, you can tell stories well. But the book is about adventures I got to be on. And yet I think when people read it, they can say, oh, I can see doing that. That looks like something I might be able to do too. And so you get that insight of how a case works, just like you ask, Hollywood style. I don't tell you the 2 years it took, here's the highlights, but some exciting ones along the way, and you get some insight on how an FBI agent gets to work.
I'm thinking back to when it was probably a good 20 years ago. I was working in DC as an instructional coach, and I met somebody who had just come out of, I want to say the CIA, but it was either FBI or CIA. And she was writing a book and she had to go through all this red tape to get it approved so she could publish. But it seems like, you know, I can understand confidentiality coming from my world, but I would think that they want that to go out in the world for recruitment purposes to keep people interested in wanting to sign up to be in these organizations. What's your take on that?
My take is right now, my book is still with FBI pre-publication to go through for those purposes, make sure I'm not sharing tradecraft or state secrets, which I knew ahead of time. And so I didn't put any of that in there. But yeah, I mean, some of the stories that you read, and I've read a number of books written by FBI agents, and I've got some colleagues that have ones coming in the future. You read them, and some, you go through and say, that's amazing. These stories are outstanding. And there's some that I read where I go, that's a great story. But also I can think that reads to me like fiction, like that's crazy. It's so over the top. And yet I know it's true because I got to be there for similar things along the way. But yeah, I think giving some insight into how the FBI works, where folks can say, that sounds like a path I could take. Part of the strength of the FBI is its diversity, and not just in gender or race, but in professional background, which is why the FBI took a chance on a Baptist pastor. My background was studying Islam, working with Muslims. My application was in process. 9/11 happens, and I think they probably said, hey, this guy might be able to help us solve an Al-Qaeda problem. So having different people say, I can bring this aspect. If you're principal, middle school principal, like there's things that you learn that now as agents collaborate with analysts and support staff as we're working together, now we've got some good ideas coming from different backgrounds.
Yeah, and I mean, you've had so much training in working with people that's invaluable. I mean, there are probably lots of agents right now that are active that could use some more training in that. Even though I'm sure they get good training, it's experience,
Yeah.
You gotta.
It comes with the experience. There's many people, we get some training, and then it's a matter of, are you on your own trying to better yourself in these fields? Are you sitting in on interviews so you can learn how senior guys do it, how this woman does it? But otherwise, a lot of it is, you know, people have it or they don't. People want to get better or they don't. And I've met many agents who make cases in spite of themselves. The way they'll come in and just berate a subject, and I think, you lost this guy. You could have gotten more out of him. But I think the ones what I did coming in, I'm watching senior guys and I'm picking up tips and I'm seeing what works and I'm trying to be aware of how people shut down and what edges you can push in those interrogations.
So once you got to Quantico and went through the training and then became an agent, how quickly are you pushed into your first case? Are you on a task force? Are you on your own? What did that look like for you?
Baby bird got to fly. Yeah, I was. So as told you, I had my background working with Muslims. I think the FBI probably said, hey, this is a guy who can work national security. I get assigned to Chicago, and naturally the FBI puts me on a drug squad. So, and then it's right off the bat, like you're expected to maintain cases, to recruit informants. Hopefully you've got a training agent who's got value, who can maybe pass on an informant or help you recruit ones, talk to them about what steps you might need to take. But when we were investigating drug cartels, we're on wires, phone taps constantly right off the bat. So I was in the deep end on this right from go, of writing affidavits, learning how wiretaps work, on surveillance, writing reports. And that was great. That got me experience right away to know how criminal cases are going to be built and worked. And then from there, working gangs, working public corruption, white collar, organized crime, crimes against children. And so just getting a feel for so many different violations.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure, I mean, to keep going back to my experience in my world, but that's a lot like what teaching is. You're just
Yeah.
kind of thrown into the deep end, and you're either going to sink or you're going to swim. And there's going to be somebody kind of helping you along, but it's really up to you to make it what you can.
Right. And then you look back and you think of what you're doing in your first year or two, and you go, oh my gosh, that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to, 10, 12, 15 years in, you're trying to pass that on to the new guy. Like,
Yeah.
hey, don't worry, try it this way, Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've got to make mistakes. I mean, that's part of the process. But I'm sure in the FBI line of work, less mistakes are probably better for safety and in your team.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And part of that is like the FBI involved as well. So from when I came in to when I retire, just the process of tactics and how we'd approach arrests went from just using speed, surprise, and violence of action, of like get in there as fast as you can and as hard as you can, to, hey, let's do a surround and call out. Let's make people safer. Let's value safety to operators as well as agents and the public, and coerce people to come out with a show of force rather than busting the door and standing on their chest.
Wow. Okay. So I don't know if you want to just kind of share a little bit for listeners and viewers, maybe like one or two stories that you think that would be relevant, maybe just to get them interested in wanting to buy your book or
Yeah.
check you out further. I know you have a website. We want to make sure that we share as well before you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So my favorite story to tell is a fun one. I worked in the Chicago office for 8 years, then got a transfer to the Cleveland division, Toledo satellite office. Toledo is where I grew up, that area. So now I'm working organized crime, but the Toledo office had a fairly robust crimes against children task force. And so in 2010, when I get there, that task force had the mandate to try to locate teenage girls who were prostituting, mainly that were being pimped out by older men, and get charges on them. So while I'm working my organized crime cases, a colleague comes to me and says, hey, we arrested this pimp named Lucky Calhoun, and he's in for sex trafficking, but he's making jail calls and trying to influence some of the witnesses, some of the girls. Would you monitor his jail calls so that, we can prevent this or maybe work up a case? I said, sure. So it went so far as his calls from jail were being forwarded to my bureau phone, where I'm muted, but I can listen and I'm taking notes. And so over the process of time, further charges on him for tampering with witnesses, but I also work up a drug case on him because he was selling oxycodone from jail through his uncle who was getting these. And so I worked up charges on his uncle, further charges on Lucky, charges on his mom. So when you can get mom charged too, that's a big win. And a couple runners and other girls involved. So did such a good job. New guy coming to town on the case. Colleague says, your choice. Who do you want to arrest? And I said, that's easy. I want Lucky's girlfriend, Monica. So day of arrest, I have a team. We go out to this small town in Ohio, and I stopped by the sheriff's office on the way, and I asked the desk sergeant, do you have an interrogation room for me after we get this subject and bring him back? And he said, sure. Do you mind me asking who you're picking up? And I said, yeah, gave the name. And he just laughed. He goes, Man, he goes, that family's in this department more than I am. Like, there's no way she's talking to you. And I thought, okay, well, we'll see. So we pick up Monica and we bring her back to the sheriff's office. And I didn't even Mirandize her. I just explained who I am and how I'd been monitoring her boyfriend's jail calls. And I had a series of them recorded that I was going to play. And I said, I'd like you to listen to this and react to it. And I play a jail call, and it's Lucky talking with a woman, and they're saying how much they love each other and want to get with each other. And she says, that's not even me. And I apologize. And I said, well, okay, how about this one? And I play the next call. It's another woman, different, same stuff going on. Baby, I can't wait to get out. I'm going to marry you. And I love you too. And she said, that's not me either. And I go, okay. I play another one, different woman. And she stops the recorder herself and she says, what do you want to know? And so what was great is I didn't have to do the usual interrogation where I'm trying to convince her that I know she's guilty and she should admit to it. I just had to convince her that there's no reason for her to be faithful to her boyfriend because he wasn't faithful to her. And
No,
that was a principle I had that just came natural of here's human nature, make her turn on him and we're good.
hell hath no fury.
Absolutely. Went right to it.
That was very, very good on your part. You let the recordings do the talking.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And then there's times where I remember we did a gang arrest and I was new to the gang squad. So I'm picking up one of the many subjects in this roundup. And here's me trying to learn how to do interrogations. And this one stumped me because I thought, well, let me start easy. The subject's name was Dorian. I remember that. And I slid across from him a photo. It was like this of him. And it was taken from a button camera on a drug buy. And I thought, let's just start with the easy stuff. So he begins agreeing with me and we get accustomed to this. And I slide the picture to him. I said, can you identify this man? And he goes, nope. And well, it's you. And he said, no, it ain't. And I said, well, right over your shoulder, you can see 2252. And I pull out his driver's license. Like, you live at 2252 Cicero. He goes, no, I don't. And I go, well, the man in the photo is wearing a necklace that says Doe. And you're wearing that same necklace right now. And he says, no, I ain't. And I thought, I have no idea how to even process this. So, there's times where my tricks work well. And there's times where just being straightforward, nothing works.
Yeah, because I would have kids come in and just deny everything, even though, like, I tried it all. I pulled all the stops. I had the friend of the friend and the girlfriend and everybody else who was ratted them out,
Yeah.
not me. So
Yeah.
what do you do in those situations? You just you present your evidence and see what happens in the court?
Yeah. I mean, for us, the confession just seals everything. But we're not arresting somebody if it's not a case we're going to, slam dunk win anyway. And so, my situation easy because my fallback is, well, I'm showing you a picture of a informant buying drugs from you and it's video recorded. So, that's my fallback. That's easy. You're stuck. Like, now how do you deal with somebody who you need a confession from in order to help him, change him, work on his life? So mine was easy. Yours a little tougher.
Yeah, no. Usually somewhere you find somebody who can give you more information and then it goes from there. But yeah, you see it in young kids who just have been told, don't admit anything.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's brilliant too, because we'd get people that we'd polygraph and the polygraph would break them. We had a case once where, guy comes in, he's applying for a position in the FBI and he's asked, are there any crimes that you've committed that you haven't been caught for? And he pauses and he's like, yeah, I've downloaded some explicit material on my computer that's illegal. And I think, buddy, like, why would you say that? I just like, nope, I don't want this job. Or if they say, oh, you're lying about that, you're like, well, I guess you got me. Like, why would you? But if you just stonewall, yeah, but people want to tell the truth. So it's hard to not at least tell some variety of the truth, which I think you probably have seen along the way of.
Yeah. They want to
Even
tell
if,
somebody.
Yes. Or say something that isn't what you want, but isn't a lie, because lying, the body doesn't like, the mind doesn't like lying.
Hmm.
And so they try to find, like, do you have drugs in your backpack? And you're like, well, I don't have my drugs in that bag. Like, they want to say,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so you have to
They're not
listen for
mine,
yes, the
or they're not
language.
drugs, but there's something else. There's
In my
always
mind,
something.
right, in my mind, I
Yeah.
think I'm going to define drugs as,
Hmm.
Schedule 2, not prescription or something. Yeah.
Hmm. Those aren't the words I would choose. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always, I would look at the school resource officer when I knew like whatever the kids did admit to, I'd be like, okay, we're going to be here a lot longer.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Because, usually there's something on a phone that leads and it's a rabbit trail.
Well, and so then my question to you is, and this is a great technique too, is when you get that confession and you're going in more cold than I was, because I've been investigating. When they admit to something, would you say, okay, and not focus on that, but say, you're giving me the least, and what else? Like,
Hmm.
you work towards, what have you done? They go, I've done this. And you're like, yep, no problem. But what else? Let's keep
Yes.
pushing.
Yes. Yes.
That's
And
good.
usually we would have them write everything down. So, because, they're just saying a bunch of stuff. Let's get this all written in your own writing. Get writing for me first, and then we'd ask questions. But the phones were just crazy amounts of information. The pictures, the texts, the screenshots. I mean, crazy.
Kendra, you and I had the same job. Look at this.
I
I mean,
know.
like when you get in someone's phone, which is what we would do, like, here it all is.
And
The
people
things,
don't realize they don't.
well, and then there were the times where not just getting into the phones on a search warrant after the fact, but the wiretaps where you feel like you're free to speak because who would be listening? And then there's so many times where the criminals, I mean, this is part of human nature. They wouldn't freshen it up, or it's tiring. Like, I can't talk in code all the time. It's
Hmm.
too hard. So now I'm just going to speak plainly, roll the dice that nobody's listening now. Or
Yeah.
I'm so tired of switching up and getting burner phones. So I've kept this one for 6 months, and it's just human nature. Can't keep it
Hmm.
up.
No, no, you can't keep track of all the lies you've told after a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And usually I would just be like, look, it's worse if you lie. That would be my spiel for the kids. Like, just tell me the truth. Even as bad as it is, it's going to be better than you making up a bunch of lies about it.
Yeah. Which is a
Well,
lie. Which is a lie, because it's better.
I know, but
Yeah.
still, and my thing was, if you lie to me, I'm going to be even more angry about all of it. But
That part.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
That
that.
part's true. Yeah.
Yeah, good times. Well, at least my training is being put to good use in some fashion, or has been, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this has been a quick 45 minutes. I'm trying to think how we're going to wrap this up. Is there any final thoughts that you want to share with listeners and viewers?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll just say this. I highly recommend anyone, you ask if the book is a good promotion for the FBI, and I'll just say outright, the best people I ever met are in the FBI, and they're full of high quality, professional, intelligent, creative people. There's a few who aren't too, but just the best people. And it was the best experience. It was the most of my adult life, but just the best experience of getting to work alongside people like that for a noble cause, to do something good, bringing some positivity to the community. So highly recommend anyone pursuing work in the FBI. And if they're curious, they can go to my website, which is preachertobreacher.com, and I'll pitch folks and help them get in if they're worthy any time of day.
That's great. It's great to hear. And, anybody out there who's thinking, maybe I've already had a career and it's too late for me. Is there any thought to that from your perspective? Do you feel like the FBI is going to be taking people that have been, that are older, or is there an age limit?
Well, for an agent, there is. It's mandatory retirement at 57, so you have to hit Quantico by 37
Okay.
in order to get in. I think there's a dispensation for military, but those guys are broken probably in the first place, so you hate to think
Yeah.
working too much past that. But no, I mean, there are for the support staff, analysts or support operations specialists, people who work to assist the investigations, full-time surveillance teams. They will hire people on later in life. And again, rather than the 24-year-old or the 26-year-old, many times those people are bringing some unique ideas and experience from their past profession. So it's a great job.
Yeah. Sounds like you've really enjoyed that chapter of your life. Are you thinking about going back to preaching at any time?
So, Kendra, do you have like any ex-boyfriends and you look back and go, we had some good times? And then you realize why you had to break up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, well, that's the case with preaching. Like, I think that was good. That was good. And then I realized
Mm-hmm. There's a
that,
time and a place.
yeah, that girlfriend might have killed me. Yeah.
I hear you. That's
So,
so fair.
so rather than preach, I'll just tell stories.
Yep. And in a way, that is a little bit of ministry for people out there who need to hear some good stories and a little lesson. So thank you for doing that and putting that joy out into the world. I think that we need to hear that, especially these days, having a husband who's retired law enforcement. I know there are a lot of good people out there, either currently serving or have served. So thank you for your service. So good luck with the book. I'm excited for you, and we'll stay in touch. So when you do, we'll make sure all that gets out in the show notes as well.
All right, very good. Thanks so much, Kendra.
Eric, thank you for being here and coming on the show to share your journey with us today. Your story is a reminder that our careers don't define us, our character does. And whether standing behind a pulpit or wearing a badge, the common thread has been serving others, seeking truth, and leading with courage. And I know our listeners are going to walk away thinking differently about purpose, reinvention, resilience, and the importance of trusting where life leads us, even when the path looks completely unexpected. For everyone listening, be sure to check out Eric's upcoming book, Irreverent, From Saving Souls to Chasing Sinners in the FBI, and follow his work through Preacher to Breacher to hear more incredible stories from his unique career. His website is preachertobreacher.com, and we'll have all that information in the show notes for you. And if today's conversation encouraged you, inspired you, or challenged your perspective in any way, I hope that you'll take a moment to subscribe, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, and share this episode with someone who might be standing at that edge of a new chapter in their own life. Because the more these episodes can get into the hands of those who need them, the better. And it definitely helps us to be able to continue making this content for those of you that are enjoying it and need it. So until next time, remember that the light in me honors the light in you. And as you head into the rest of your week, to let your light shine through. Go slow to go fast, and thanks for listening.